Good morning, Internet. I once watched two people look at the exact same real estate deal and have completely opposite reactions, both with the same volume and both with total confidence. One guy looked at it and went, "This is the safest thing I've ever seen. I'd put my money into it." The other guy looked at the same numbers and said, "This is a death trap. You are insane." Same deal, same spreadsheet, and the same room. Neither one of them was wrong, which is the part that took me a long time to understand. They just had different risk settings. One was wired to see opportunity, and the other was wired to see the cliff. And the funny thing is that they each thought the other one was broken. The cautious guy thought the bold guy was reckless. The bold guy thought the cautious guy was a coward. And they were both completely sincere in that each one of them thought the other was missing their marbles. But at the end of the day, they were just missing the fact that they were just built differently. And that's what I want to get into today. There are three basic risk settings that people come in: conservative, balanced, or aggressive. And knowing what you are and being able to spot everyone else's quietly runs a huge amount of what happens to you in real estate. And not one of the three is a bad one, even though that every single one of them thinks that the other is. Let's go. First off, let me say what I mean by risk profile, because people hear risk tolerance and think it's about how brave you are. Nope, it's not a bravery thing. It's more like a thermostat that you didn't set yourself. Some people are just built to be comfortable with a lot of uncertainty. You can show them a deal with 100 unknowns and a big upside, and they feel excited. Their heart rate goes down. That's not courage, it's just where their thermostat sits. And other people see those same 100 unknowns and feel genuinely unwell, and that's not cowardice, it's just a different setting. The mistake everyone makes is treating their own setting as the correct one and everyone else's as a deficit. The aggressive person thinks the conservative person is scared. The conservative person thinks the aggressive person is going to get them both killed. And they're doing both the thing where you assume everyone secretly has your thermostat and is just being weird about it. They're not. You can stretch your setting a little. You can learn, you can get more comfortable. You can talk yourself in or out of things. But your baseline is pretty stubborn, and fighting it for 30 years is a miserable way to live. Way better to know where it's set and play accordingly. Let me walk through the three, and I'll be honest about what's great and what's a disaster about each because they all have both, just like everyone has their own individual strengths and weaknesses. Let's find out. All right, we're going to start with the conservative because this is the one the internet loves to bully. The conservative wants to protect what they have more than they want to chase what they could get. They want margin, they want a cushion, they want to know what happens if everything goes wrong before they think about what happens if everything goes right. They read the fine print. They read the fine print behind the fine print. They have a worst case scenario ready for a sunny Tuesday. And the whole real estate internet treats this like a disease. You're too cautious. You're leaving money on the table. Fortune favors the bold. And the conservative hears this and feels like they're failing at being an investor when most of the time the conservative is the one who's still in it. Because nobody tells you the conservative doesn't blow up. When the market does its periodic thing, where it reminds everyone that prices in fact go down, the conservative is the one sitting there comfortable because they never overextended in the first place. They didn't make the flashiest returns in the good years, and they did not care because they also didn't get wiped out in the bad ones. Their superpower is that they're hard to kill. In a game where most people quit because they got hurt, being hard to hurt is enormously underrated. The downside, and it's real, is that a conservative can protect themselves right out of ever doing anything. You want a cushion so badly that you never actually jump, and then you're just a very safe person with a lot of and no portfolio. The conservative's failure isn't losing money. It's the slow ache of watching opportunities go by for 10 years because none of them were ever quite safe enough. Now, the aggressive, someone who's having a great time and possibly about to set something on fire. The aggressive is wired to move. Big swings, fast, lots of leverage, comfortable with the level of risk that would put a conservative in the hospital. Where the conservative sees 100 unknowns and feels sick, the aggressive sees 100 unknowns and feels alive. They'd rather take the shot and find out than sit around protecting a position. And the internet loves this person because they make for incredible content. Every quote, "I did 10 deals in my first year" video is an aggressive who happened to do it during a good market. They're exciting, they're bold, they make things happen, and when it works, it's enormous. And it really does work. That's the part that conservatives don't want to admit. The biggest fortunes in real estate usually got built by somebody with a high risk setting, taking a swing that a cautious person would never have. Aggression pointed at the right opportunity at the right time is how people go from nothing to a lot in a hurry. They didn't get there by being careful. They got there because they could stomach a bet the rest of us couldn't. The problem is the part that nobody films. For every aggressive who tells you about their 10 deals, there's the one who took the same swing in a worse market and is now very quietly not making videos anymore. The aggressive's failure mode is that they're so comfortable with risk, they forget risk is real right up until it introduces itself. They overextend, they leverage the thing that was already leveraged, and the same boldness that made them rich in the up years can vaporize them in the down ones. The gas pedal works great until you need a brake and discover you've never installed one. And then we have the balanced. In the middle, and I want to be careful here because it's tempting to call this one the winner, and it's actually not. The balanced person takes calculated swings. They'll accept real risk, but they want to make it make sense. They want some protection in place. They want upside, but not the kind that can ruin them. They're the person going, "Okay, I'm in, but let's not bet the house." On paper, this sounds ideal. You get some of the boldness and some of the safety. But the middle has its own trap, and it's a little sneaky. The balanced person can end up being mediocre at both ends, not bold enough to catch the huge upside aggressive grabs, and not protected enough to be as bulletproof as a conservative. They can fall into this lukewarm middle where they took enough risk to get hurt, but not big enough to win, which honestly can be the worst of both worlds. There's a version of balanced that's just, quote, indecisive, wearing a nice suit, and they didn't commit to safety or to the swing, so they got a watered down version of each. When it's good, balance is genuinely the most adaptable of the three. They can flex towards caution or boldness as the situation calls for it. When it's bad, it's just permanent fence sitting that can look like wisdom. The difference is whether the balance is a real choice or just an inability to pick. So here's the part that took me the longest to figure out, and it's maybe the most useful. Knowing your own setting matters, but knowing other people's matters just as much, especially anyone you do deals with. Because most partnership blowups aren't about money or ethics. They're two different risk settings that didn't know they were different. An aggressive partners with a conservative, the deal hits a rough patch, and the aggressive wants to double down while the conservative wants to pull everything out, and they each think the other has lost their mind. Well, neither has, they just have different thermostats, and they're finding out about it at the worst possible moment with money on the line. If you know that going in, and your partner runs hotter or colder than you, that whole fight becomes manageable. You can build for it. The conservative knows the aggressive is going to want to push and plans for it. The aggressive knows that the conservative is going to want to pump the brakes and doesn't take it personally. The mismatch goes from a relationship ender to actually kind of useful because between the two of you, you've got both a gas pedal and a brake, and you know which is which. And honestly, the same goes for who you take advice from. When an aggressive influencer tells you to go all in, and you're conservative, that advice isn't wrong exactly. It's just calibrated for their thermostat and not yours. Following aggressive advice with conservative wiring is how careful people get talked into bets that keep them up at night for a year. Know the setting of the person talking before you take the medicine. So in closing, none of the three is the good one or the best choice or anything. And it's not a choice at the end of the day. It's who you are. And I know everybody wants me to say, okay, which is best so they can feel validated or feel bad or anything. And I'm not going to because it genuinely depends on the person and the game. The conservative wins by not dying, and the aggressive wins by swinging big. The balanced wins by adapting. They all win. They just win completely different games, and they all lose badly if they try to play someone else's. The actual move is to know which one you are, stop apologizing for it, and stop trying to cosplay as one of the others because it looked better on YouTube. The conservative trying to act aggressive gets hurt. The aggressive forcing themselves to be conservative is miserable and bored. Play your own setting and keep one or two people around you with the opposite setting close enough to argue with because they see the thing you're constitutionally blind to. If you want an actual read on where your risk setting sits instead of just guessing, and people guess wrong about themselves constantly, everyone thinks they're more balanced than they actually are, there's a free quiz in the description. It's a few minutes and a decent place to start. See you on the next one.